Up next on Talking Portraits, host Tom Parish talks with Dr. Elliot McGucken. They talk about how artists can find financial success by seeing their quest as a classic hero's journey. Are you a surfer or a cowboy? Find out on ITConversations.
All right, Elliot. Well, welcome to the Talking Portraits show.
Thanks.
Yeah. And where you said you were out in Malibu?
Yeah, Malibu, California.
And what's the temperature out there now?
Today I think is like mid-60s. We're always about 10 degrees off from just the other side of the mountains or hills or whatever. Like in the valley, it's always 10, 15 degrees more.
Are you pretty close to the water?
Yeah, I could see it from here, actually.
Oh, how nice. Yeah. How far is that from, like, Muscle Beach?
I don't know where... Oh, you mean Ventura? I think
Yeah,
Muscle,
Ventura.
Mussel.
Yeah. Oh, no. No, Ventura, yeah.
Oh, Ventura. Oh, I could get there in like 25 minutes if I tried.
Yeah, it's not that far, huh?
No, not at all. I've been there before. I worked out once, but the funny thing is if you work out on Muscle Beach, like all these tourists are coming through, they're taking pictures of you like you're someone famous. I go, this is I'm not representative of the muscle people in America, so I better not work out here anymore. Because I don't want people going home with like, this is America's strongest people. That would not look good.
Well, all right. Well, thanks for being on the show. I've been quite a fan of, the hero's journey and Joseph Campbell's work, the hero with 1,000 faces. And so when I heard about your work where you were marrying it up with a very interesting way of empowering people, artists in particular, into entrepreneurial kind of activities, I wanted to know more about that. So let's start with that. I mean, I understand you're teaching in 2 different locations, and you've got this course called Artistic Entrepreneurship and Technology 101.
Yep. Yeah, I'm teaching at Pepperdine now. I'll be teaching here next year, too. And I started the class at UNC Chapel Hill, so Carolina, California. But I was fortunate enough that the Kauffman Foundation had given a grant to UNC Chapel Hill, who was looking for proposals for classes. And my background's physics, but I always loved arts. I played in a band, and I have always written. And I've always loved the epic movies, and especially like the old westerns, Sergio Leone, spaghetti westerns. And
yeah.
Reading the great books and classics, you go back, the first showdown in all of Western literature actually happened in the Odyssey, when Odysseus arrives on home after his long road of trials, and then his kind of battle hope begins because he has to reclaim his house. So, of course, he disguises himself as a beggar, bides his time, and people taunt him, abuse him. A very common theme in every single Western where nobody knows that Clint Eastwood is like Clint Eastwood. Uh-huh. So they tend, like, early on, there's always people pick on him, like kick him or, like, shoot him or fight with him. And then it comes out, like, his true identity. Another thing, Sergio Leone, all the early Westerns, Clint Eastwood always played the man with no name. And just in the exact same way, Odysseus had no name. And actually, when he beats the Cyclops, he tells him that his name is No Name. So then when he's running away, the Cyclops is going, no name did this to me. Or nobody is how the translation. It's the Greek is, nobody did this to me, which makes no sense. So there's a little bit of humor in that. But there's also the juxtaposition that in many ways it's the hardest thing for Odysseus is to conceal his identity. Because he's like a hero, and you're supposed to fight, and your name is your most important thing, your identity.
Yeah.
So as soon as he gets free, he yells his name like, I'm Odysseus. But then that gets all the gods. I think Poseidon fathered the Cyclops, or it's one of his children. So he got all upset with Odysseus and stuff. So it's the whole thing of the whole, like, taking pride in your accomplishments and stuff can often lead to worse things on down the line. So there's a lot of parallels between something from 2,800 years ago and now. Mm-hmm. And a fun thing about my class more particularly is 2 books that are required reading are John Bogle's Battle for the Soul of Capitalism and also the Odyssey. And John Bogle, he just came out with that in 2005, I believe it was. But it's basically a book that details, it's called Battle for the Soul of Capitalism. He started the Vanguard Mutual Fund. Mm-hmm. And if you take a look at his life, it totally parallels the hero's journey. In the fact that he first happened upon a Fortune magazine article in 1949 in the Princeton Library while looking for a thesis topic for a senior thesis. And in many ways, that simple premise that he laid down, that the risk taker ought to get the reward on Wall Street, became Vanguard. Because what it is, it's a no-load mutual fund, basically meaning that those who put up their money should get the lion's share of the rewards. So that's a perfect fit. Also, it comes with so many other details, like his whole road of trials, that he still didn't put it into action for the first 25 years that he worked on Wall Street. He went on to head the Wellington Fund.
Yeah.
So that whole the refusal of the call or the reluctant hero.
Well, let's back up a little bit. I'm curious, what personally motivated you to take this particular path yourself and actually develop and teach a class like this? I'm wondering what was it that happened, or what was your call around that?
A couple different things. One was I'd always loved the great books and classics, and then probably a couple years before the class started, even before then, I'll tell you a different story, that I went to the Harvard University Law School to talk about digital rights management.
Oh, okay.
And I took a freshman with me, this programming genius, and he subsequently dropped out of school because the CS program he says, I don't want to learn how to draw boxes in Java. That was his take on the CS. And then the English department really didn't do the trick for him either. So what I want to do is create a course for those people who want to create their own destiny, and they want literature and technology and law in the same class. They don't have the patience to take a whole bunch of prerequisites and learn how to draw boxes in Java and then go out and trademark something. But they want to do all that stuff yesterday. So it's the quickest path to having people do that.
Right.
Then I always wanted to marry the whole idea of Joseph Campbell's hero's journey to business, because there's the whole story of business, and it's that whole idea that business isn't just about serving a bottom line and making money, but it's about creating wealth. And Joseph Schumpeter, the famous economist who actually wrote a lot about entrepreneurship, has that famous quote that the stock market is no substitute for the Holy Grail. It's that whole idea that this life isn't about always serving some bottom line, and certainly when you look at Stephen Jones and Richard Branson, you don't get a sense that they bring out all the accountants. I mean, they do at some point, but they don't lead with, what's going to make us a bunch of money tomorrow. They run with a vision or a quest.
So this class you teach, it's a semester long?
Yep.
And how long have you been teaching it?
I've been teaching it, actually a little bit over a year now, but I've taught it in many different ways. I've taught it as a freshman seminar. I've taught it as a class that incorporated law students, MBA students, undergrads, and graduate students at UNC. This summer I'm teaching it as an MBA class that's about 7 classes long, and I've also taught it as an upper-level class that's a semester long. And I've been talking about teaching it in a law school context too. So I've taught probably 5 or 6 versions of it. It's been just over a year.
Well, why do you call it artistic entrepreneurship and technology?
That's a little bit of a historical accident, because it could be called hero's journey entrepreneurship.
Mm-hmm.
But the arts entrepreneurship works perfectly because in so many ways, artists are natural founts of wealth. And when you think about what an artist does, is any artist who creates successful, enduring art has to put the higher ideals above the bottom line.
Mm-hmm.
If you just want to serve a bottom line, then you can do American Idol, and you can call that art. Though a lot of people might, debate, is that really art? What's going on there? Because it's still, another thing about art is it exalts the artist. Because Picasso is Picasso. He wasn't the person that Simon Cowell thought was cool that week.
Right.
So it's that whole idea that art is always more loyal to the artist and those who put the higher ideals above the bottom line.
Mm-hmm.
And that, if anything, is what is needed on Wall Street. This whole artistic entrepreneurship calls on people to say, wait, it's not just about making money and seeing how many pension plans you can dip into and how many corners you can cut, but it's actually about creating wealth. Those things that endure and last, those things, that can't necessarily be counted, that are more weightless, such as the spirit and the soul. It's about serving those ideals as opposed to just a bottom line. And none of this is new, and I feel guilty. I mean, Homer and John Bogle laid it out so well in their respective books, The Odyssey and Battle for the Soul of Capitalism. So to walk into class on that first day and say, well, a lot of people say that the great books and classics are useless in business, but wait a second here. Read John Bogle's book, and he founded the $1 trillion Vanguard Fund, no small feat, and he's actually saying the most important things are character, and character is something that you learn in story.
I'm curious, though, do you see some parallel in what you're bringing here, this sort of integrating or bringing together some really powerful concepts for people and aligning them with the past as well as sort of new virtues for the present and the future, is somehow in parallel with a big shift that's occurring in the economy due to broadband networks and things of that nature that are allowing individuals to be more self-empowered.
That's so true. And we live in a time where both the means of production and distribution have been democratized. But what's funny is the first instinct to that wasn't really a realization of the true deeper beauty of that, because what happened is we got all the Web 2.0 companies, which rarely, if ever, pay the creators.
Yeah.
And when you look at YouTube, it got $1.6 billion when it got sold to Google, and how much of that actually went to the filmmakers and creators uploading?
Oh, yeah, that's a very good point.
It's a little bit like Tom Sawyer painting the fence and getting everyone to help him paint the fence.
Well put.
But as time goes on, the thing is when you look at it, technology is a commodity, and bandwidth gets cheaper and cheaper, chips get cheaper and cheaper, computers get cheaper and cheaper. We're going to have more broadband, more wireless networks. So it really is what isn't the commodity is the art that artists create. And that's another thing that my class wants to emphasize, that, wait, no, art relies on the individual, and
Right.
thus we need strong mechanisms for protection to allow them to protect and profit from it.
Right. And as a matter of fact, that's actually something, I guess we could sort of go into that now. I was going to say later, but you mentioned in some of your coursework here about aligning, with attorneys and kind of really understanding the legal aspects of.
Yeah. Too often the debate's always framed as the record labels versus the Web 2.0 companies.
Yeah.
And the artist keeps on getting left out time and time again, because Stephen Jobs is saying, well, we're going to NDR him and give it all away for free.
Right.
Okay, well, how's the artist going to get paid then? It's always the artist. A funny thing is artists and academics so often tend to do, if they love what they're doing, they'll do it for free. They just want the opportunity.
Right.
So it's easy to get them to sign contracts saying, if you give me $10, you get to own everything I do. Thanks for the $10. And it's even easier to just have them upload it for free. Let's get rid of those contracts. But when you think about it, art is a large reason why we use the internet. Why we download. We don't download because we want to read Cisco documents. We use our routers and everything. We're thankful, but the soul of it, going back to the soul, is really created by the artists and the entrepreneurs and the creative individuals.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And too often, kind of the message is, you have no value on your own, but let us group you together with a million others and sell you for $1.6 billion. And we'll keep all the money, because that's how it works, and you don't get anything.
What do you recommend to an artist then? What
what's funny is I think artists, as time goes on, we're going to see a Web 3.0, Web 4.0, Web 5.0, and there's going to be a system, and it might kind of be somewhat of a separate internet where digital rights management isn't evil, and it's not the best thing ever, but it's a freedom that artists have to protect and profit from their content.
Mm-hmm.
So again, and it kind of takes the whole thing. You don't go to a lawyer to book an airline ticket. And when I was on a panel with the deputy counsel of the USPTO and the Register of Trademarks, I got lucky to be on that panel. But one of them said that registering a trademark these days is akin to booking an airline ticket. So the whole thing, the internet bypasses lawyers, and you don't have to ask them permission to set your rights. And that's kind of all these myths that are still of a bygone era. And I feel in many ways iTunes is a product of the record labels. Because when you think about it, they deal by and large with the big four record labels, and still the artists get about 9 cents. And actually Weird Al Yankovic, that article, he gets paid less than what he was getting paid when a solid CD was sold. He's getting paid less per song kind of on a download basis from the iTunes store. Which makes no sense, because they don't have to store and warehouse CDs. They don't have to pay a record shop. They don't have to pay rent for the retail space.
Right, right. Well, so let's back up. I think we just glossed over something that's really pretty profound, and that's that you were talking about copyrights and some of these other legal mechanisms can actually be obtained by the individual very easily.
Oh, yeah, definitely. I think we're going to see more and more systems like that, automated systems for digital rights management,
mm-hmm.
because, and I'm talking about a system that serves everybody, just no matter if you're Microsoft, you just came up with Microsoft Mail, or you're a shop owner, you can go on and you pay the same for a trademark. It's $300.
Mm-hmm.
But you can do that in one afternoon. And I think the same thing's going to happen for digital rights management. You don't have to go through iTunes, but we're going to see more and more opportunities for artists that are going to spring up that's going to offer them kind of a whole different spectrum of digital rights management to choose from. Because I really don't think you'd be hard-pressed to argue against an artist's right to do what they want with their own content that they created. Because I know that it's always digital rights management is always kind of a synonym for Microsoft or the record label.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
But those days are kind of ending and over. and especially as technology as a commodity is going to become easier and easier for people to use and more prevalent, there's going to be a need for indie artists. Because when you think about it, like an indie artist, suppose you put $5,000 into a movie.
Yeah.
Like, a lot of people say, well, that's only $5,000. Because if you're talking about like a major studio, Microsoft.
Yeah, it's a lot for the individual.
I know, but it's a lot of money, for the individual. It's not just the money, but it's the blood, sweat, and tears that went into it. Stuff you can't even count.
Totally, I can relate.
So if they could have a system where they could sell it and have people, pay $1 or $2 rather than having pretty much to put on YouTube or somewhere like that, having no other viable opportunity to distribute it. And then I think once a system like that comes, it ends up benefiting everyone.
Yeah.
If the little guy can use it, then the big studios can use it too.
Yeah, I think you're right. I visit South by Southwest this year also. I want to ask you about your talk there, but I attended the film and the interactive sessions. And, on all of the sessions where there were discussions about rights and should we or shouldn't we upload to YouTube, or things like that, it was a real issue because, once you put it up there, then everyone has access to it. You want people to have access to it, but somehow or another you want to get paid for your work too.
Yeah.
And it's a conundrum, Well, so what was your talk about? I suppose it was more, you used the term, making your passion your profession.
Yeah.
As this relates to Web 2.0 and 3.0 trends. How did your talk go?
It touched on a lot of things we just talked about, but I also basically did a quick rundown of like the stages of the hero's journey.
Yeah.
Which is generally like a full semester class, but I could go over it real quick if you wanted me to in 10 minutes or something. Or
yeah. Let's just touch right through those and kind of just start out with some context as to how this might apply to someone's life.
Cool, definitely. Well, this comes straight from the Heroes Journey Entrepreneurship.org site.
Sure.
And it says /heroes_journey/entrepreneurship.html.
Okay.
But basically, I just have the Hero's Journey Entrepreneurship outline, and it begins in the ordinary world, where you wake each day to the routine, rise, and leave your dreams behind.
Right.
And that first day of class, I tell my students to set up a blog and start blogging their ideas.
Great.
And also to get a notebook and start writing everything down that you think about. Because one thing about writing an idea down is it kind of crystallizes it, and it's something that stays with you the rest of the day.
Yeah.
In any project that I start, I don't just write the whole thing, but I usually start with one sentence, and then I go off for like a day. And during that whole day, that sentence keeps coming back to me. So you can always think about what you're doing, those first early parts of business. You're planting a seed, and you have to let it grow organically. And if you never write that sentence down, then you're not going to find that special news article, or you're not going to see that thing in the movie or remember that quote, or hear something that somebody says and go, oh, wait, I can incorporate that.
Good point.
So that whole thing of don't quit your job just yet, but just in the morning spend 10, 15 minutes thinking about your new vision, and it'll stay with you and you'll get a lot of work done the rest of the day. 2, the call to adventure. And that's often, the ordinary world stage number 1 is before your product or your new venture has been added.
Right.
The call to adventure is kind of a dream. Like, that you could always open a better club, or you can make a better product, or you have it in you to write a better novel. Everybody who starts off down one of those long roads always has that idea, the world hasn't seen mine yet.
It's like you say here, it's just something you can't seem to shake, but it's in you.
Yep. You can't shake the feeling the wave is real, that they can't see it.
Yeah.
And that's the thing, a lot of times other people can't see it, but that's exactly where your value lies. And that's the difference between working a corporate job, where generally your value is determined by how much you can see that other people see, and the entrepreneur's job, where your value is actually in the things that other people don't see.
Excellent.
So register those copyrights, file that provisional patent, and I have links on this site directly to the sites where you can go ahead and do this stuff. A copyright's $30, provisional patent's about $100, and trademarks a couple hundred. But the great thing about it is just to follow these links and read the site, and you'll see, this isn't that hard. And nobody's ever hurt anybody from filing these things. I mean, of course, you want to conduct due diligence and do plenty of searches, make sure that what you're doing hasn't been duplicated, because the last thing you want to do is kind of try to do something and waste everybody's time when it's already out there.
Right.
3, refusal of the call. Voices tell you that you aren't good enough. Friends, parents, teachers, bosses, and your own internal voice.
Yeah, mind talk. Yeah.
So it's kind of funny, and so often it is that we internalize so many voices that we've heard throughout our life saying,
right.
You can't do that. And, of course, a lot of them are sensible, and that's where you have to decide who to listen to and who not to listen to and make the call at the end of the day. But the important thing to do is to always seek mentorship from those who have done, for they're more likely to say, yes, you can.
Right.
Because there's so many ways to do something wrong and so few ways to do it right. So there's plenty of people that have done something wrong who also tell you that it's impossible. But you really have to see which voice is the loudest, and hopefully it's the one telling you to follow that dream. There's nothing wrong with the refusal of the call because that's due diligence. And John Bogle put off founding Vanguard for 25 years, working on Wall Street and other jobs, and everyone telling him, well, if it was that good of an idea, it would have been done. So they all tell you that. That's pretty much true about everything, right?
Oh, yeah.
The Wright brothers. If flying was a good idea, somebody would have done it by now.
Oh, yeah.
You got to think you're smarter. Step number 4, meeting the mentor. And this is important to seek out mentors. And mentors come in all walks of life. It's not just a professor or a teacher or somebody who says that they're your mentor, because I think you can hire a mentor these days. But it's your favorite books and movies. When you watch your movie, you're seeing so often the soul of the screenwriter. An interesting thing that I always pull up is the top 10 grossing movies of all time. Adjusted for inflation, Gone with the Wind is number 1. Then every single movie except for one is either based on a book, that whole unity of vision, like an author on a book, like Lord of the Rings,
right,
The Godfather, and things like that, or the director and screenwriter are one and the same person. Again, the unity of vision, such as Star Wars with George Lucas directing and writing it. So there's that whole thing that art requires the unity of the vision. And we just had Bill Fay of Legendary Pictures keynote our Hero's Journey Entrepreneurship Festival, and he produced 300, which was a movie devoted to the Battle of Thermopylae.
Oh, he did that movie?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, I just
He's
saw
saying
that.
The magic was that Zach, the director, was able to basically storyboard out his vision and produce that exact vision. So I think that's a common trait. When you have a talented director and the movie is their vision, then that's when it's a hit. And when you think about your favorite movies, you generally know it has a distinctive style.
Oh, yeah.
That director has their fingerprint on it. So often it is that it's the director who's also written the screenplay or had a lot to do with it. So meeting the mentor, also Nolo.com is a great website. The USPTO, I have a link here. It has a site specifically dedicated to artists, musicians, authors, and creators. So meeting the mentor is really all about reading books, and the internet. Just look everywhere for every tidbit of information that can help in your venture.
I like this next one.
Calling the bluff. This one is the one that I kind of added, and I think it's almost more pertinent to these days than any, because there's just so much strange stuff that surrounds us every day.
Yeah, what's that mean exactly?
Calling the bluff?
Yeah.
Well, it's a number of things. One is nobody knows the hand you hold, and you can't see theirs. So there's a whole thing, and any time you're negotiating with someone at a table for a job or a contract or something like that, they're going to try to talk your value down.
Right.
And especially if you're in a band or you're an artist, Van Halen has that famous quote, we've been on tour for a year, sold 1 million of albums, and we're $2 million in debt. So it's the whole idea that they get you to sign this contract that basically transfers all the wealth to them and all the risk and work to you.
Yeah.
And they'll tell you, well, that you're just a band, we could sign anybody else. So you have to look within and say, well, yeah, but we're not just a band, we're Van Halen.
Right.
And we're going to do it this way. And we're going to hold out, and we're going to make sure it's done right. So that's the whole idea of calling the bluff. And never take negotiations personally, because that's just good business. To tell Van Halen that, look, you have to pay us to go on tour, and you're going to owe us money after you're done touring and sold 1 million albums. That's good business, but you have to sit at that table and read everything before you sign it and call that bluff. And so often it'll happen in all walks of life that people will say, well, you need to do this, or first you need to do that, or you need to do this. And you really, at the end of the day, you have to, again, listen to that internal voice and just...
So what is it you mean, call the bluff, live the Renaissance, and vast wealth will be yours?
Did I write that? No, I'm just kidding. Basically, call the bluff, live the Renaissance, and vast wealth will be yours. I have this overarching theme of all the work that I do.
Yeah.
That if you put our lives in historical context, and the vast majority of my days are spent looking 1 foot in front of me and trying to find that bill or find out who that is or talk to someone or that number I lost or something. But every now and then when you take a step back, you realize that we live in postmodern times. And if you look at some of the books, if you go to a bookstore, you'll see things like The Closing of the American Mind, From Dawn to Decadence, A History of the Past 500 Years of Cultural Life, and The Battle for the Soul of Capitalism, or How Wall Street Ripped Us All Off, or The Growth of... So So it's just one title after the other, and you don't have time to read all the books, but you can just read all the titles, and you say things might be a little bit different these days. I mean, we live in the divorce culture and things like that, and you can't really count on a company to pay your pension. And if they do pay the pension the whole time, then all of a sudden at the end of the day, somebody figures out, well, we can save a lot of money by not paying the people pensions that we owe.
Yeah, it's got a dark tone to it.
That's entrepreneurship.
Right.
Let's not pay the pension. That's more money. So that whole idea that we live in these postmodern times, that you have to call the bluff in a larger sense. That maybe like that fancy new car or that money or that salary isn't all that it's cracked up to be.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe there's something going on. And I'm surprised I haven't brought in the Matrix yet, because usually I bring it in with refusal of the call and meeting the mentor.
So
Neo actually gets a package with a phone in it.
Yes.
Morpheus, the mentor.
Uh-huh.
So that's the whole thing. And when he's in that cubicle, and he says, look, there's two ways to leave the building. You can either go out on the threshold or in the custody of the police. So he goes out on the threshold, but then he comes back in the building, which is a total refusal of the call. And they actually used the phone there. And then meeting the mentor, he goes on to meet Morpheus eventually, who gives him the red pill or the blue pill. And he gets to decide. So, of course, he takes the red pill, because otherwise it would have been a boring movie. And he chooses to know the truth. So it's that whole idea. And then calling the bluff is when there's that point in the movie where he just says no. Like the agent is about to kill him.
Right.
And he just says no. And the very exact same thing happened in the movie Tombstone, when Kurt Russell, as Wyatt Earp, is surrounded on all sides. And he's going to, there's no way out. He just gets up and walks straight into the fire just saying no, no, no. And the bullets somehow magically are just missing him. So it's that whole idea of having that faith in calling the bluff. We talked a little bit about Odysseus saying, my name is no name. And then at the end, revealing his true identity as he goes from beggar to Odysseus and kills all of the suitors and reclaims his home. There's that point in the Matrix, too, where the agent has him down on a track and he says, if you hear that train coming, that's the sound of your death, Mr. Anderson. And Neo goes, my name is Neo. So it's that whole thing of, no, you don't know me, this is my true identity. And that's kind of calling the bluff, because, he really is Neo. That's his true identity in other world. And the Matrix is so artfully done, weaving all of this in there. So that's really what it comes down to. It is the bluff. People always try to pigeonhole you or box you in or put you somewhere, especially in these postmodern times. There's a lot of, Plato would call the shadows dancing on the wall.
Yeah, so the way, my interpretation of that would be, in Call the Bluff, is about how you it's where you're going to take your stand at that point about who you are. And then this Live the Renaissance is, sort of the call to the sovereign self. Live in the vision of what could be, and move from there, and from that, vast wealth will be yours.
Yeah, exactly.
I like that. Next one, crossing the threshold.
Yeah, that's when Neo actually takes the red pill, and it's the point of no return. In the business world, the great thing about these days is that you can cross the threshold on the internet for not that much.
Right.
Like the last class, we set up an e-commerce store at Yahoo. I had to pay $23 for it. But it's just fun to go in a class and actually set up a store in class.
Yeah.
And I invite the students to join me if they want. A couple of them are setting up stores. My friend who opened a restaurant, that's a little bit more of the point of no return. When you sign a 15-year lease on a building,
right,
and you hire a bunch of employees, and you have all loans out against everything that you own on all the equipment, and you've got customers coming tomorrow and employees showing up. That's kind of the point of no return, because you got to sink or swim. But so often it is that chance favors the prepared mind. It also favors the bold.
I love that.
Chance favors the prepared mind.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, it's one of my favorites.
Favors the bold. That when you run into that, and my friend, he's a perfect example, because he might have been diagnosed ADD at one time, which I always think is so many ADD people are just creative and they can multitask. So he loves that. He thrives in 8 million things going on, and that whole will just to get the whole crew motivated and to win. And to him, it's like a great adventure. He's actually a sailing captain for 8 years.
Oh.
And he actually worked with celebrities in the Caribbean. He'd always man their yachts. He said running a restaurant, he had absolutely no experience in it, but it's the exact same thing as running a ship.
Yeah.
And that's what it is. It's just a lot of work to get done every day, and you got to keep your wits about you and just motivate the crew. And so he runs about 4 or 5 restaurants now. But
Oh, wow.
we always talk about his restaurant. It's fun, just talking about all the things. I feel for him because that's no easy business.
No, I know.
The food
Yeah.
industry.
Yeah.
Just so many ins and outs and so many funny little things. And here we've got incorporated biz filings. For like a couple $100, you can own your own incorporation. And
Right.
you can take Mark Cuban's advice, invest in you incorporated. I think there's a book called that, not by Mark Cuban, but by somebody else.
Right.
So that whole idea of choosing to cross the threshold and making that conscious choice that today I'm in business, and for like under $500, you can get like a domain, a website, and you can incorporate, set up your own bank account for it, and then you can start trying to get customers.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just something I encourage anybody who ever wants to do anything on their own, because it might not be tomorrow, might not be next week, but sometime in your life, you're probably going to come upon a better way to do something.
Yeah.
It might even be at work, where if you said it, like you'd get reprimanded, saying, "What? We've always done it this way," and then it's like time to go out on your own and do it a better way.
Then there's the road of trials.
Yes, the road of trials. It ain't easy out there. Some statistics say that 90% of small businesses fold in 5 years.
Yeah, that's what I hear.
And I was like tying the road of trials into number 8, which is test allies and enemies, because it's along the road of trials that you meet your friends and allies. And unfortunately, oftentimes you can also make enemies. But the whole thing about seeing this in the context of mythology and story and movies is that enemies aren't really, like a lot of times you take it personally, you want everybody to like you.
Mm-hmm.
But enemies are going to come anyways whenever you make a stand for something or whenever you try to bring something.
Absolutely.
You're going to have competitors. And maybe enemy is even a harsh word. We can just say competitor.
Mm-hmm.
And so often it is. I mean, Jimmy Connors and John McEnroe, on some levels they're enemies, but on other levels they brought out the best in each other, right?
Mm-hmm.
And even friendlier relationship, Agassi, Sampras, they were huge enemies on the court, but, they're also best of friends, like off it. So that whole idea that the road of trials is where so much of it comes to life. And it also tells students that, it's not necessarily about punching a clock at 9 and punching another one at 5.
Mm-hmm.
But wait, no, this is life. This is like an adventure. This is like going across like Middle Earth to Mordor to get the ring there.
Yeah.
And this is your choice. You can actually choose to do that because the United States, and we always open up with like the moral premise of the Declaration of Independence, saying that all men are created equal and given the right to pursue happiness. And we couple that with constitutional clause that states that artists and inventors have the right to own what they do.
I think there's a big point there that's sometimes easy to pass over quickly, and that's choice, is that you do have a choice. As you bring yourself to the events of your life, moment to moment, in the road of trials, and the tests, and the allies, and the enemies, and the naysayers, as I call them, that's going to happen. And so you make a choice, and you correct, and you make a choice, and you correct. It's like a jet airline, It doesn't really go straight from here to London. It makes 1,000 little corrections, left, right, left, right, left, right, left, right, depending on how the wind's going and things of that nature. So, but it's all choice. And a lot of people just don't always quite get it, that it is your choice. You can choose one path. It's like the red pill or the blue pill, right? And you could do that now, and then you can do it again, and then you can do it again. And how you bring yourself to that has a whole lot to do with, your energy and your attitude and your willingness to 6 times down, 7 times up kind of thing.
Yeah, that's exactly so true. It is choice, that word there, and putting it in a mythological context. That's another thing, like the great books and classics are so they're not taught these days.
Yeah.
And we love them because we watch these people that we feel for make these choices. That part where like Neo chooses, that we can see ourselves in that chair.
Oh, yeah. It's all so often.
Another. And just the choices that people make or the sacrifices they make on screen to do that. Like when Frodo chooses to say, I'll take the ring. When everyone's bickering over like nobody can take it because everyone will be tempted.
Yeah.
And that just brings the silence over because nobody really thought of him because he's just like a little hobbit.
Uh-huh.
He's like the least likely suspect. And that's another fun theme about it is that a hero isn't like the biggest, boldest person, but often it's, just your common cubicle worker like Neo.
Right, exactly.
Or like humble hobbit. And even John Bogle's case, like the founder of Vanguard, he's always so quick to like say, I'm no hero. I just got up and tried to do the right thing as best I could every day. And I hope that I made a good product, But not too many people found $1 trillion ventures in their life. But it's fun putting that in that context, that it's about doing the little things right. It's about the character, not about, the whole accumulation of vast amounts of wealth to like show off.
Mm-hmm.
But it's more or less like always rooting it in serving other people.
Okay, supernatural aid.
Supernatural aid, that's also sometimes meeting the mentor. It's also called like the rescue from without. And it comes at different places, but it also comes, that quote from Benjamin Franklin, God helps those that help themselves.
Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of like if you go the whole way out there, a lot of times you'll get this thing that happens in a magic way to help you out.
Right.
And you get this rescue at the last second. And that's the whole thing. If you take chances, Joseph Campbell said it, follow your bliss, doors were open where there were none before.
Right.
So you don't know, like, you get out that far distance that you're actually going to run into that person
Mm-hmm.
or that place or that thing. But because you took that chance, because you left, this opportunity opened up. And one of the things I just point out is that open source software, in many ways, can provide that seemingly supernatural aid. If you think about it, software is labor immortalized.
Mm-hmm.
So there's just so much power at your fingertips to have global distribution and easy production of like an HD video. Like,
oh yeah,
you can buy the whole thing for like under $1,000 and get it out there.
right.
So it's just that whole thing to jump in, and that we really do have like this supernatural wonder. Because when you think about a computer and its vast power to distribute something around the globe, it's just really amazing. It used to be, especially when they founded this country, everything's going by horse. So to get a letter from Philadelphia to D.C.
Mm-hmm.
was 3 days if you sent it express.
Yeah.
And nothing ever traveled faster than that. And here we have immediate distribution all over the world. So it's kind of like supernatural aid is a little bit about, just look at all the wonderful stuff that surrounds us these days in this era of technology and just run with it.
Yeah. Number 10, stringing the bow, seizing the sword.
It's got to do, stringing the bow comes straight from the Odyssey, that the whole thing is that there's one thing that you were cut out for that nobody else can do. I think Bagger Vance, the movie, says everybody has their swing.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the whole thing about making your passion your profession, because generally your passion is something that guides you through life towards the things that you're really good at.
Right.
Not always. Sometimes if you want to be like the best rap artist ever, somebody goes, well, you can't be a rap artist.
Yeah.
But having said that, I'm saying that because that's kind of what happened to Kid Rock. Everybody knows who Kid Rock is. But he was a rap artist only. And then he was actually signed on Ice Cube's label and everything. And then Vanilla Ice hit. And Vanilla Ice kind of like destroyed the whole thing about being a white rapper.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's just kind of like, oh no, now you're Vanilla Ice. So he went absolutely nowhere. But he went back and he taught himself some chords. And he started becoming more like heavy metal. So he mixed like the hip-hop and the chords.
Yeah.
And reinvented himself. And he had a song called Somebody's Gotta Feel This. And some Hollywood producer got a hold of it through somebody, and was listening in his car one day. And then gave him a call, and the rest is history. But that whole thing of, there are those things that you're only cut out to do, and sometimes the roads are going to shift some.
Right.
You think you're going to be one thing, but it turns out your talent's other place. And now he's gone country. So it's just that whole thing that you have to follow your passion. You might start off down the road thinking you're going to be a rap star, and then writing a bunch of country hits, 10 years on down the road.
Right.
But it's that whole thing about believing yourself and following it. And I also say degrees, money, and titles mean little out here. Victory goes to those with integrity, those with honor, courage, and commitment. I think, especially in these days, we tend to be overeducated and worry a lot about degrees and titles.
Yeah.
And perhaps that can explain, because academia is following those motivations as opposed to truth and beauty and the whole spirit of the poets and prophets who rarely had any degrees to boast of or anything like that. Maybe it's lost a bit of that soul.
Yeah.
I also say ideals are your most valuable asset. They are those entities which inspired those dreams that awoke you long ago. And the whole thing is art is a long-term investment, and growing your own business is a long-term investment. And there's no more valuable asset than ideals.
I agree. And then the showdown.
The showdown / ordeal. It's always a favorite part of every Western movie. And by Western, I include every court battle, too, because that's nothing more than a showdown.
Right.
It's just in the courtroom. And even Eminem's 8 Mile, you have the rap battle. So it's always some variation on that theme of Odysseus showing up home and reclaiming what's his.
Mm-hmm.
And there's only one who can string the bow. There's only one who can win. One of my favorite classics, the first movie that broke Clint Eastwood as an international star, Sergio Leone's Fistful of Dollars. The beginning of it is premised with when a man with a .45 meets a man with a rifle, the man with a .45 is a dead man. And that's said by the outlaw in the movie to Clint Eastwood, who's a man with no name. At the end, he turns the tables because it comes down to who can load it quicker. And he says, you said when a man with a 45 meets a man with a rifle, the man with a 45 is a dead man. Let's see if that's true. Go ahead, load up and shoot. So it turns out that the 45 can be loaded quicker. And I think there's a huge motif there of the lone individual up against the huge bureaucracy.
Right.
Because the bureaucracy will always tell you that you're going to lose, you're going to die, there's no way you can make it out here.
That's so true. Absolutely.
And then it's that whole showdown that, no, you're doing things a little bit differently. You know the rules are different. So that's a huge, powerful motif. The other great thing about that movie is that it's also such a pro-family movie because there's a mother who's divided from her son. I mean, the classic relationship of her, like holistic relationship of mother-son. I mean, nobody ever wants to come between that. But she's divided because she's kind of held captive by the gangsters. So Clint Eastwood reunites them.
Mm-hmm.
They say, why are you doing this and risking your life? He goes, well, I once knew someone like you, and nobody was there to help him. So it's that whole idea of, like, the Old Testament God. I read this in a book somewhere, the Old Testament God coming down and seeing that justice is done. That's just a fun thing. The showdown ordeal is a part of entrepreneurship, and anybody who brings something new into this world so often is punished. I mean, the whole idea, precept that no good deed goes unpunished.
All right.
And we should also remember that Steve Jobs was kicked out of Apple.
Right.
Because,
the
NBA's kind of come along and say, well, an entrepreneur, he talks funny or he dresses funny.
Right.
It's all some little dig like that. And then they they band together and go, well, yeah, we MBAs, we kind of know what's going on, so let's go to Steve Jobs.
Right.
Of course, everybody knows the history of that. Apple went into negative land and waited till Steve Jobs came back, and there's only one who can string the bow, and he took it to new heights.
Right. Then, rescue from without, the resurrection. Yes.
The Matrix is a great example of that, because Neo dies in the Matrix.
Yeah.
And Trinity kisses him, like on the other side. And
it's so beautiful.
Yeah, it is. It's a great thing. And so that's the classic rescue from without, because she's in the other world, and she brings him back to life.
Uh-huh.
And, the agents are all amazed that this guy's come, and he's been resurrected. Another classic rescue from without is Star Wars, when Luke Skywalker is all but made it there.
Yeah.
And Darth Vader's closing on his tail, and who shows up again but Han Solo? And that's a classic case of the one who said he was not going to go but went anyways. Right. As opposed to those who are called but never go. Right. That classical biblical thing. That was beautifully illustrated in that. He's better than he knows. He's got like a better heart that he just never really noticed. Right. So that's why we love that character. And then, of course, in Lord of the Rings was most artistically done, the rescue from without, because Frodo, after 9 hours of the movie, he's taken the ring the whole way to Mordor, and then he decides to put it on. Because, I want this. And it's kind of the whole same at the end of the Gospels, like, why hast thou forsaken me? Like the last words that Jesus says before he's crucified. And here's Frodo, comes all this way, and then he puts the ring on. Uh-huh. And he says, I'm not going to throw it in. I'm going to keep it for myself and the power. But it's Gollum who bites his finger off, fighting for the ring, and falls in inadvertently. Right. So the thing there is that nobody wanted to throw the ring in, and yet it made it in anyways. Mm-hmm. So there's like, that whole idea is like, is there somebody else watching and playing around with us the whole time? So it's that whole classic rescue from without was so artistically done with that. So, I mean, these are such common themes, the resurrection theme, the rescue from without. Right. And in Hamlet, there's a divinity that shapes our ends, refute it how we will. And that Shakespeare's genius just shines through in those simple words, because a divinity that shapes our ends, rough hew it how we will. Does that imply that the divinity shapes our ends, meaning that it has full control, or that it only shapes it in a very fine way, even though we rough hew it? So it's that whole idea of, what's going on out there, which is a brilliant way of phrasing it. So anyway, so it's fun. And then it says, those who live by ideals have no need to fear death, as Socrates realized, for the soul is immortal. And Socrates actually said a great thing in his apology, which we always talk about in class. What's that? And he said that all money, all wealth comes from virtue. Yeah. Not the other way around. Virtue does not come from money and wealth. Right. And for that, he got sentenced to death. So it's always a fun thing. But, of course, you have the classic resurrection. In his case, it's his words like live on in his spirit. Mm. And then finally, the road back. Return with elixir, freedom. Yeah. This is the whole part about coming on home, sailing it on home. Mm. And also, a lot of times there's that famous book, Crossing the Chasm, about why some technologies make it and some don't. Yeah. It's not enough to invent a lot of times, because that you remember, what was it? I don't even, Friendster.
Yeah.
Friendster, like the big hot new social network. None of my students know what Friendster is now.
Yeah, it's gone.
And that's only like 4 years ago or 3 years ago. And so they were there, and now they also own the patent to 6 Degrees, who was before them.
Oh,
and 6 Degrees happened before they even had pictures on the internet.
Right.
Friendster allowed you one picture. MySpace comes along and says, put as many pictures as you want, put your dog up there, put your band. As a matter of fact, yeah, we'd like you to put your band up there.
Yeah.
And gave it this whole freewheeling kind of L.A. spirit as opposed to like the Silicon Valley, more stodgy kind of like, one picture, we're going to like revoke your account, and it better be serious. It can only be from the shoulders up. And, so MySpace just sails it on home. And that's the whole thing, that it's not enough to invent. And you can make the whole journey. You can get to 12, step number 12, and still not make it home. Ralph Waldo Emerson said, build a better mousetrap and the world will beat a path to your door. I worked at a technology company with a famous founder, and he actually said, no, you have to market that mousetrap because the world's not going to come and beat a path to your door.
Right, it's true.
It's like so true that sailing it on home, you can invent, you can file the patent, you can incorporate, but you're not home yet. And the same thing with Odysseus, too. Like, even when he gets home, he's not home yet because that's like about halfway through the book. Then he still has to fight for his home, even though he's back. So it's kind of like that whole idea that every single step's important and you're not home till you're home. It ain't over till it's over. But it's also about returning with the elixir.
Yeah.
And that is the newfound wealth that because you took a risk, because you followed your dreams, because Richard Branson decided to run a student newspaper and then turn it into a record label and then turn it into a chain of record stores, then one day it became an airline all of a sudden. But time and again, he's returned with elixir because he goes into some stodgy old thing that has commoditized the customer and he makes it fun and breathes new life into it. And new value, and he builds business after business that way.
Well, let me read these last 3 sentences. I think they're just really so powerful. As under 13, this is, you took ownership in your dreams and destiny. You called the bluff. You caught the wave, and the truth shall set you free. And then and this is the one I like the most, you added to the wealth of the world, the long-term wealth of the world, via the simple act of following your passions and dreams. And everything you learned on this hero's journey will come in handy along tomorrow's journey while setting out at dawn. So you end, but you also allow a beginning.
Oh, yeah, the whole thing, the freedom to live is what Joseph Campbell said, and the freedom to go back and do it again.
Yeah, exactly.
I think that's the nature of the entrepreneur. You know, they did it once, and, you know, I want back in, I want to do it again.
Well, in life, and that's sort of how life is. Life, you know, the sun comes up the next day, and there are more opportunities to bring yourself to the events of your life.
Yeah, it's the journey that we get addicted to.
Yeah.
That Aerosmith quote, life's a journey, not a destination. I'm sure they took it from somebody else.
Well, listen, this has been wonderful. One last question for you, Elliot.
Sure.
So, how's this been? You know, you've been on this mission, this journey yourself to bring these patterns, you know, these ancient patterns of a way of living that could bring about greater joy in one's life in the end, you know, to get where they're going. What sort of results are you seeing in others, and how has this changed you?
Oh, it's been, well, I was joking, it's been one rescue from without after another. It's, you know, it's funny, that's another thing that if you set off, like, you're thinking alone, like, following these ideals, you run into a lot of kindred spirits.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
Like what Joseph Campbell said, doors were open where you thought there was none before.
Providence will follow. Yes.
Yeah, it is true. I know that book just came out called The Secret, saying the law of attraction.
Oh, yeah.
I have a physics background, so a little bit of the mixing metaphors. It's like, wait, that's not quite how it works, I don't think.
Yeah, I hear you.
But there is a general thing that having a positive attitude. But it's a lot of times that glosses over it as, like, you know, you need to have a realistic attitude, but then try to do your best to also make yourself of use. So that's kind of a theme. Like, I love doing this. I love all the opportunities to teach it, but I know that the greatest value always lies in how can this best serve the students. And one of the best things is I feel like I'm always taking the class with the students, because I have some ventures and I have some patents filed and stuff like that. So it's a lot of fun because we talk about intellectual property and then we go straight to like the patent searches I've been working on or something like that, or a patent search that students have been working on, or some part, like one of them just actually found in Homer's Odyssey the part towards the end where he says when he's reclaiming his home, and he says, let it be known that good behavior or loyalty and truth lead to good business on down the road. Not
Yeah.
sure those are the exact words, but what he's saying is the exact same thing that John Bogle's saying, that character and honesty and truth and trust are the most valuable things. Same thing that Socrates said, same thing that Martin Luther King Jr. said, that if we are to go forward, we must go back and build it on a solid moral foundation. Same thing that Einstein said when he talks about the Jewish Christian heritage being one of our most valuable things that comes to us in the stories.
Mm-hmm.
So just the whole, I mean, I feel fortunate to just able to work with such great material. And that's another thing. In devising a curriculum, I say, well, John Bogle and Homer have done a lot of the work for us. If we bring in Joseph Campbell and all these movies and things, then really what we're just trying to do is show the students the greatest has been thought and said and bring it to life, and hopefully come out with a couple books that help serve that spirit.
I can see it. Well, I feel fortunate to having this opportunity to have this conversation with you, Elliot. This has really been fun.
Oh, thanks so much. Thanks so much for the interview and all.
You've been listening to another interesting program from Talking Portraits.
The post-production audio engineer for this program was Tom Parish. Our website editor was Kat McConnell. The series producer is Tom Parish.
My name is Phil Windley, and I hope you join me next time for another edition of Talking Portraits here on ITConversations. T-Conversations. 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 T-Conversation. Up next on Talking Portraits,